What if I told you the Civil War never truly ended? Not here. Not in Virginia. Here, the battlefields still breathe. The old mansions listen. The rivers remember blood. Stand too long in the mist, and you might hear boots crunching on fallen leaves, voices whispering orders that no one has given in over a century. These aren't just haunted places. They're unfinished stories. Places where shadows wear blue and gray, and history refuses to stay buried. Tonight, we're crossing into the heart of Virginia's darkest legends. 10 locations where the past doesn't just linger, it waits. So stay close, watch carefully, and remember, in Virginia, the war isn't over. It's just waiting for you to notice. 1. Gettysburg of the South, Fredericksburg battlefield. Fog rolls in thick over Fredericksburg, blanketing the fields in a hush that feels almost respectful, until you realize it's too quiet. The sunken road, once lined with desperate men firing blindly through smoke, now lies still. But it doesn't forget. Visitors who walk it at dawn describe the sound of boots scuffing gravel behind them. When they turn, no one is there. A woman who wandered too far from her tour heard a voice bark, "Ready, aim!" So close, she felt breath on her ear. She ran without seeing anyone, convinced she'd stepped onto ground that refused to let its command die. At night, the battlefield changes completely. Drums are heard in the distance, a steady, muffled cadence that seems to move through the fog. Musket fire cracks once, twice, then stops. Silence falls like a verdict. One local photographer, hoping for atmospheric shots at dusk, captured shapes, row on row of pale gray silhouettes, rifles at their sides, staring straight ahead. When he lowered his camera, the field was empty. Park rangers don't laugh at the stories. They have their own. One described approaching a lone figure standing watch near the edge of the old Confederate line. The ranger called out, thinking it was a lost visitor. The man turned his head slightly and dissolved into the mist. Some places teach history with plaques and monuments. Fredericksburg battlefield teaches it with echoes, with shadows that never lower their rifles, with orders still being given, long after anyone is left to obey. 2. Cold Harbor battlefield, Mechanicsville. Cold Harbor is quiet now. Grass has grown over the trenches, the soil no longer stained with blood. But under that stillness lies a memory so violent, it refuses to stay buried. This was a place of slaughter. Thousands fell in minutes, cut down before they could even raise their rifles. Some say the land remembers. Some say it keeps score. Visitors walking the old trench lines have seen shapes. Men in tattered uniforms slumped against the walls, heads bowed as if waiting for relief that never comes. One hiker reported seeing a soldier leaning on a musket, face obscured by grime, who slowly lifted his head and simply vanished. At night, the sounds begin. Groaning. Orders were barked in panic, the crack of rifles with no flash. Paranormal teams have left audio recorders running overnight, only to return to hours of silence, except for moments where someone cries, "Water," or a hoarse voice pleads, "Mercy." Cold spots are common here, not gentle breezes or morning chill, but sudden drops in temperature so sharp they make your breath plume in midsummer. People stand frozen, convinced someone is beside them, even feeling a hand on their arm, rough, desperate, before it disappears. Local guides don't sugarcoat it. They say Cold Harbor isn't just haunted by ghosts, it's haunted by regret, by men sent to die for a hopeless charge, by final prayers never answered. And when you stand on that quiet ground, listening for wind. What you hear instead is a battlefield that never learned how to be silent. 3. The Exchange Hotel, Gordonsville. The Exchange Hotel stands regal and genteel on the outside. White columns, wide porches, a portrait of Southern hospitality. But step inside, and the walls tell a story of agony the paint can't cover. During the Civil War, this hotel became a hospital, a place where thousands of wounded soldiers were laid out on blood-soaked floors, waiting for treatment that often never came. Some rooms still bear the dark stains no scrubbing could fully erase. Visitors today speak in hushed tones about what they've heard echoing through the hallways. Disembodied voices barking clipped medical orders. Scalpel. Hold him. Amputate. Even in bright daylight, guests say the air grows heavy as if someone is leaning over them, watching, deciding if they're worth saving. More unsettling are the nurses. They appear only to vanish, moving in quiet, urgent strides through walls that didn't exist in their time. One guest on a late tour saw a woman in a gray dress bending over an invisible patient. When she called out, the figure slowly stood, turned without eyes or mouth, and faded into the wall. Paranormal investigators come here often, drawn by the sheer volume of recorded evidence. EVP sessions have captured low, exhausted moans, sobbing that rises and falls like breath, a clear voice whispering, "Help me." One recording caught the frantic words, "Don't let me die," over and over, trailing off into silence. It isn't a haunted house in the usual sense. It's a hospital frozen at the moment of greatest need and greatest fear. And if you listen carefully at the Exchange Hotel, you'll hear the war is still being fought. One surgery, one scream, one prayer at a time. 4. St. Albans Sanatorium, Radford. Perched on a hill above Radford, St. Albans looks imposing even in daylight, its long brick facade watching the valley below. But it's not the building's age that chills you. It's the memory of what happened inside. It began as a boys' school in the late 1800s, strict and punishing, notorious for bullying that pushed some students to take their own lives. Later, it was converted to a psychiatric hospital, a place meant to heal, but known instead for electroshock therapy, restraints, and whispered rumors of patient abuse. Today, the hallways are silent, but only in the way a held breath is silent. Guests report shadowy figures moving at the ends of corridors, not running, not hiding, just waiting, as if curious who dared return. One visitor on a ghost tour paused to tie his shoe and felt something brush his cheek. A cold, soft pressure, like fingers testing his skin. He bolted down the hall, only to hear quiet laughter behind him. Others have stopped dead in doorways, paralyzed by the sudden sense that something was deeply wrong, as if they'd stepped into a room meant for dying. The walls whisper, low, urgent sounds you can't quite make out until they resolve into single words. Stay. Don't. Help. Paranormal teams have recorded entire conversations that shouldn't exist. Calm voices in empty rooms debating treatments no one is giving anymore. And the dread is real. People walk in fine and leave shaken, some unable to finish the tour. Guides say it's not uncommon for visitors to burst into tears for no reason, overcome with a suffocating wave of grief and despair they swear isn't their own. St. Albans doesn't roar or rage. It seeps. It poisons the mind with memory, and it's patient enough to wait for yours. 5. Bunnyman Bridge, Clifton. By day, it's just an old railway overpass tucked among the trees, a narrow tunnel of concrete and shadows. But after dark, Bunnyman Bridge becomes something else entirely, something that feels alive and hungry. The legend says it started with an escaped convict, a man in a ragged rabbit costume who fled an asylum transport. They say he hid in the woods, ambushing travelers, his face hidden behind those long ears, eyes glinting in the moonlight. Some claim he was never caught. Others say he was. But the killings didn't stop. Even now, the bridge has a reputation that makes locals avoid it after sunset. Strange lights dance beneath the arch when no cars approach. Figures stand perfectly still at the edges of the tree line, only to fade when headlights swing across them. Visitors tell of hearing laughter, not joyful, but broken and breathless, echoing off the concrete. One couple parked nearby heard a scream so loud and close, they thought someone was being attacked. They called the police. No one was found, but the woman later noticed bloody scratches across the back of her jacket, though she'd felt nothing at the time. Some say they felt unseen hands tugging at their clothes, pulling them toward the bridge's center. Paranormal investigators who dared to run EVP sessions beneath the span captured harsh whispers, often simple, direct, and chilling. Get out. Mine. Stay. Locals warn you not to test it. Don't say his name 3 times under the bridge. Don't challenge what might be there. Because whether it's the ghost of a madman or something older that wears his legend like a mask, the Bunnyman waits for company. And if you're not careful, he might make sure you never leave. 6. Bacon's Castle, Surry County. Bacon's Castle rises from the fields of Surry County like a testament to the colonial past. Solid, symmetrical, stubbornly old. Built in 1665, it's the oldest brick dwelling in the U.S., its walls having survived war, rebellion, and time itself. But not everything inside has moved on. During Bacon's rebellion in 1676, the house was seized and occupied by rebels. Violence stained its halls. Some say it soaked into the brick itself. Today, that violence doesn't sleep. Visitors walking the grounds at dawn have seen colonial-era men pacing the edge of the property, muskets slung over shoulders, watching silently before vanishing into the early fog. One guest described making eye contact with a figure in a tricorn hat, only for the man's face to dissolve like smoke. Inside, guides tell of furniture that shifts overnight, heavy chairs dragged inches across floors, tables found tilted at impossible angles. Once, a caretaker returned to find every drawer in a parlor sideboard yanked open wide. No footprints, no sign of break-in, just cold, stale air filling the room, like someone had been rifling through the past. And the grand hall is infamous. Even in summer, it's bitterly cold in certain corners, breath frosting in the air for seconds at a time. Guests report sudden shivers, goosebumps racing up their arms. One woman on a historical tour felt her hair lift from her neck as if fingers had brushed it aside to whisper. She ran out sobbing, convinced something had been right behind her. People come to Bacon's Castle for history. They leave with more than dates and names. They leave with the certainty that the house is not just old, it's occupied by those who still have something to defend. 7. Braley Pond, Augusta County. Hidden in the quiet woods of Augusta County, Braley Pond seems peaceful at first glance. A glassy pool reflecting pine and sky, frogs croaking in the rushes. But those who know it well refuse to visit after dark. The place has a reputation it earned the hard way. In the early 2000s, Braley Pond was the site of a brutal murder-suicide. A man stabbed another to death by the water's edge before taking his own life. Since then, the air around the pond has felt charged, like static before lightning strikes. Visitors speak of being watched, not just the uneasy sense of wildlife nearby, but a heavy, deliberate scrutiny. They'll turn to scan the tree line and see nothing, but the feeling only grows. One hiker described seeing shapes between the trees, silhouettes that didn't move with the wind, just waited. Strangest of all is the water itself. Stand too close to the shore and you might hear it, voices whispering just below the surface. Low, breathy sounds you can't quite understand. One camper leaned close, trying to hear words, and felt a blast of icy air in his face. He fell back, convinced something in the pond had exhaled. Some say they've lost time here, realizing hours have passed in what felt like minutes. Others complain of sudden dizziness, nausea, or intense dread that only lifts once they're miles away. Paranormal investigators have captured disembodied voices on tape. Simple phrases like, "Leave," "Stay," "Mine," each in a rasping, waterlogged tone. Braley Pond is beautiful if you don't look too hard. But if you do, you'll see it's not just a place where lives ended violently. It's a place that keeps them, and it whispers for more. 8. The historic Occoquan Inn. Occoquan. Nestled on a quiet corner in the old riverside town of Occoquan, the historic Occoquan Inn seems like the perfect retreat. Low-beam ceilings, warm brick hearths, candlelit tables that promise cozy charm. But ask the staff, and they'll tell you there are more guests than they seat. Dating back to the early 1800s, the inn has watched the town grow up around it and kept its secrets. After dark, those secrets begin to show themselves. Servers clearing for the night often find tables newly set, wine glasses, folded napkins, as if expecting guests who never walked in. One employee told of coming in at dawn to find 2 place settings arranged perfectly in a corner booth, chairs pulled out, though no one had been inside since lockup. Voices drift from the upstairs rooms, soft and conversational. Staff go up expecting lingering guests, only to find rooms empty and beds undisturbed. Sometimes the voices stop the moment they touch the doorknob. Other times, they continue even as the door swings open, fading only when the listener steps inside. Footsteps are heard pacing, measured, heavy, crossing the length of the empty dining room late at night. A manager once stayed after closing to finish paperwork. She heard boots on the wood floor, slow, deliberate. She didn't move until they stopped right behind her chair. She left her notes unfinished. And always, there's the story of the murdered woman. Killed upstairs by a jealous lover in the inn's earliest days, her spirit is said to roam even now, checking each room for the one who betrayed her. Guests who sleep on the second floor have reported waking to see a woman in a simple white dress at the foot of the bed, watching with hollow eyes. The historic Occoquan Inn is beloved for its history and its charm. But for some visitors, that history doesn't stay in the past. It waits for you to come in, sit down, and listen. 9. Hollywood Cemetery, Richmond High. On the bluffs above the James River, Hollywood Cemetery sprawls with quiet authority. It's more than a resting place. It's a statement in stone. Massive monuments, winding paths beneath ancient oaks, and the graves of Confederate generals and 2 U.S. presidents. But for all its solemn grandeur, the dead here are restless. As dusk falls, the cemetery changes. Shadows lengthen, merge, and then detach themselves from the headstones. Visitors walking along narrow gravel paths have reported figures moving between graves, tall and indistinct, only to vanish when approached. One man described stopping to read an inscription, feeling someone step up beside him, and hearing a quiet, ragged breath in his ear before he fled. Near the Confederate section, people have seen men in gray uniforms standing at attention, heads bowed as if awaiting orders that will never come. Some even describe these soldiers lifting their arms in salute toward no one before dissolving into the drifting fog that gathers at the river's edge. Muffled crying has been heard near the oldest graves, not wailing, but the exhausted sobs of someone who can't quite stop. One visitor recalled sitting on a bench at twilight and realizing the sound was beneath her, coming up from the earth itself. Even in daylight, the atmosphere is heavy, oppressive. Guides warn newcomers of the chill that creeps in without warning, a cold that no sun seems able to drive off. It wraps itself around the living like mourning clothes, urging them to be quiet, respectful, or perhaps to remember. Because Hollywood Cemetery isn't just history, it's grief carved in granite. And if you linger too long among the stones, you may feel the past pressing in, asking you to grieve with it. 10. The Cavalier Hotel, Virginia Beach. Perched high on a hill overlooking the Atlantic, the Cavalier Hotel radiates 1920s glamour. Grand staircases, soaring ballrooms, and polished marble floors that echo with the laughter of another era. But behind the glinting chandeliers and ocean breezes lies a darker reputation. The Cavalier is beautifully haunted. Since its opening, the hotel has seen multiple suicides and mysterious deaths. A wealthy guest who leapt from an upper window. A woman was found drowned in her bathtub with the door locked from the inside. Staff whisper about rooms that remain perpetually cold, no matter the season, and hallways that seem to shift when no one's watching. Guests have reported seeing bellboys in old-fashioned uniforms, smiling politely before vanishing around corners. One family watched a uniformed porter hold their door open, only to realize no one had rung for service, and the corridor outside was empty. Most chilling is the woman in white, often seen gliding silently through the halls or pausing on the grand staircase. One guest tried to greet her, only to watch her turn, revealing hollow, darkened eyes before fading into nothing. The ballroom tells its own ghost story. Long after closing hours, the front desk receives complaints about piano music drifting through the walls, lively jazz numbers that abruptly cut off when staff check the room. No pianist, no sheet music, just the lingering scent of old perfume in the empty space. And then there's 3 a.m., the witching hour at the Cavalier. Guests often report sudden, insistent knocking on their doors, 3 sharp raps that jolt them awake. When they open up, the hall is deserted. The Cavalier Hotel promises luxury, nostalgia, and service with a smile. But as any longtime employee will tell you, not all its guests ever check out. Some stay, and some are waiting for you to join them. Virginia isn't just history you read about. It's history you feel, even when you don't want to. From battlefields that never quiet to old hospitals that won't forget, these places prove the past isn't finished with us. Next time you're here, listen carefully. The war might be over on paper, but in Virginia's dark corners, it still rages. Which of these places would you dare to visit? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the haunted heart of America.